going to install with Azure Data Studio. You can also use Azure Data for the API course. Just open a random folder and make a junk folder project or junk project folder, put FinShark in it, and create it just by going down here and creating a new folder. Then go inside that new folder and just open it up with Visual Studio Code, and it's going to look something like this. It's just going to look brand new. But if you are coming from React or you want to clone the React project, I'll leave a link down with the GitHub, and you can go ahead, you can clone it, and then what's going to happen is that your project is going to have a front end in it. And this is what the project is going to look like for the rest of the course. But I repeat, you don't need the front end and you don't need this actual homepage PNG right here. It's not required, and you do not need the front end in order to complete the API portion of this course. But after, we are going to be connecting the API and we are going to be connecting the front end, and I will let you know when that happens. But for right now, you do not need the actual front end. So in order to create a new .NET project, what we need to do is we need to open up Visual Studio Code. Then what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are within the FinShark folder or whatever folder that you created for your project. And all that you're going to do is you're going to type in .NET new web API -O, and then we are going to type in API. And what the O means is that it's going to actually name the folder. If you just type in .NET new API like that, it's going to dump all the contents in a folder, and it's not going to look as good, I think. And then what you want to do is you want to type in API. And once you do that, you're going to see an API folder show up inside of your project. Now, here's another important fact that could really trip you up. Whenever you are actually in the terminal, this is the actual terminal right here, you need to be very cognizant that you are within the right project. So if you are just seeing this means that you are not technically in the project. You are just in the folder that you make. So you need to make sure that you CD into the actual API. And once you do that, you are pretty much good to go. So once we've got everything installed, we've got our actual API built, the first thing that we want to do is we want to actually run this thing called .NET Watch Run. .NET Watch Run is pretty much like starting the engine of a car. Whenever you buy a new car, the first thing that you're probably going to do is you're probably going to want to start the engine. So let's go ahead and let's start it to make sure that the engine is actually working. And the way that we're going to do that is, first of all, we're always going to make sure that we are within our API folder. Then we're just going to type in .NET Watch Run. When we run .NET Watch Run, it's kind of a tongue twister. What's going to happen is you're going to see this thing called Swagger. Now, Swagger, you don't really need to know much about Swagger. Swagger is just a standard that is used to actually map API endpoints. Back in the day, you actually had to have software to actually test your API endpoints. But with Swagger, everything's built into a browser. It auto detects everything, and you will see with time what a wondrous thing Swagger is, because it takes away a lot of the hard work of having to actually test our API. So if you've gotten everything correct, if you installed .NET correctly, you're going to see something like this. The next thing that we need to talk about is our program.cs file. Our program.cs file is very important because it's pretty much like the back of our TV. If you think about the back of a TV, you really don't mess with the back of the TV that much, but it's still the back of the TV is very important because it's where things are kind of being plugged in and where certain types of settings are set, and it's where you can only mess with some of the very important settings, but it's more or less just kind of a fancy interface to plug things in. And we're going to clean up our program.cs file right here. We've got a lot of stuff right here. This is actually a minimal API endpoint. We're going to go ahead and delete this because it's just boilerplate code. And we've also got a record right here, which we don't really need as well too. This is going to be all of the important code, and all of this is what you need. But let's talk a little bit about what's actually going on here. This is a builder. This is going to control things like dependency injection. It's going to provide you with services and various things that you can actually add to your program, almost like a module. This is going to be what's going to control your actual pipeline. The app is going to control the actual HTTP request pipeline. And this is where your middleware is going to be. Also, various settings that you can configure. And at the very end, when this is actually executed, the actual server is going to be
Gì vậy? Trời ơi, đang ngồi máy tính. Hiện đi làm mà gì đó xíu đi. Mua cái gì chạy? Đi, đi. Ừ.
run because things have to start somewhere, and this is technically where the point of origin or the Big Bang of your app is going to be. We need to talk about API fundamentals. Now, computers, I say this a lot. If you watch a lot of my videos, I say this all the time, but computers can only CRUD. Computers can't really do anything else. You can't, like a computer really at the end of the day is just creating, reading, updating, and deleting data. But it's important to know what a lot of these verbs are, because you're going to see things like get, post, update, and delete. And it's important to be able to kind of mentally map these, because even though these are the exact same thing, a read is a get, a post is a create, an update is an update, and a delete is a delete, it's important to be able to map these, because most people are familiar with CRUD, but a lot of people are not familiar with these API verbs. So whenever you think of post, just remember that a post is just a create. Whenever you think of a read, just remember that it's a get. And update and delete are pretty much self-explanatory. Also, we need to go ahead into here. This is going to be the last thing is we're going to install all of the extensions. You technically, I guess you don't need these, but these are going to make your life a lot easier in the world of Visual Studio Code. So first things first, just go back into Visual Studio Code. You want to go to your extensions file. The way that you install most of them and the way that you install most of them at one time is you just go to the C# dev kit, and it's pretty much going to install a lot of this for you. But if you don't want to install C# dev kit, you could just install C# by itself. You can see this down here. And let's go to we'll go to the .NET extension pack. We also want to install the .NET extension pack. And we want to install, just pretend click, we want to install the install tool as well, because we need to install the NuGet gal. We need to install stuff from NuGet. And we also want to install NuGet gallery. So we're going to go NuGet gallery. We'll install NuGet gallery, pretend click. Time is you just go to the C# dev kit, and it's pretty much going to install a lot of this for you. But if you don't want to install C# dev kit, you could just install C# by itself. You can see this down here. And let's go to we'll go to the .NET extension pack. We also want to install the .NET extension pack. And we want to install, just pretend click, we want to install the install tool as well, because we need to install the NuGet gal. We need to install stuff from NuGet. And we also want to install NuGet gallery. So we're going to go NuGet gallery. We'll install NuGet gallery, pretend click. I've already got it installed. And we also want to install Prettier as well too. Most time people have this already, but if you don't have Prettier, make sure to install Prettier, because it's going to make things look a lot better and it's going to format your code for you. And also, you want to use the extension pack by Joe's, let me see here, Joe's Creative. So go here, the C# extension pack. So say C# extension, yes, by Just Creative, and go ahead and install that. And that's going to give the ability to just quickly go into here and add a C# file. And that's pretty much it. To just quickly go into here and add a C# file. And that's pretty much it. After this, we're going to get started on actually building out the API. That was a very long video. Hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure to smash that like button. Make sure to smash that subscribe button. And as always, thank you for watching. Okay, guys, so and one-to-many relationships. But before we even do that, people always say, we need to go deep, Teddy, deeper. And we're going to go deep in this video, and we're going to get very philosophical, and I'm not even joking. So why do we even need APIs? Like, what's the big deal about APIs? And why is it that every corporation in America needs them and will pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for you to maintain and build APIs? Well, really, at the end of the day, an API, in this context, there's all different types of APIs out there, but in this context, an API is basically code that sits on top of a database and allows us to interact with databases in a very safe and self-contained way. We don't just want anybody to be able to touch our data in all different types of ways. We are very chaste. We are a very chaste database. We don't want people just grabbing all our data in different types of ways, so we have an API. But let's even go a little bit lower than that. Why is it that corporations want databases so bad? Corporations need databases because databases allow us to store data almost like in a filing cabinet, but linked together and at lightning speed. And if that confuses you a little bit, just let me keep going. First things first. Databases are like a filing cabinet because they allow us to methodologically store data in different categories and different ways. Very similar to a filing cabinet, we will have these things called models that are pretty much each part of this filing cabinet. And within the filing cabinet, we have little pieces of paper, we have little pieces of data that are stored in individual files within our filing cabinet. So think of the filing cabinet as the database and the models as little forms or little blueprint for forms. The models allow us to create these little pieces of paper of which we can then store in our database. Another important thing is that these models, these databases, they're no different from Excel spreadsheets. All a database is a fancy Excel spreadsheet that we can link together with foreign keys and primary keys, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. But let's just go ahead and let's build out our models. Then we can start in on the primary keys and foreign keys. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to right click on our API folder and we are going to create a new folder where we are going to store our models. Now, remember, models are just one drawer in the filing cabinet. We are going to have a stock model because obviously if we're going to design a stock app, we need a place to store our stocks. And then also we are going to create a comment model. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to go in our stock and we want to type in prop and then we want to tab. If you prop, you prop, and then you tab, what you're going to get is you're going to get this int and then you're going to get a property. Int. What is actually an int? Well, we can't just store whatever we want to in our property. If we want to put an ID, we have to put an integer as an ID. Int is short for integer. What is an ID? Well, when we actually create these forms, whenever we create these pieces of data, we need to be able to uniquely identify them. Think if you went to this metaphorical dentist's office and there were 3 Teddys in there, and my last name is very common too, Teddy Smith. There could actually be other Teddy Smiths in this metaphorical dentist office that we are about to create. So we need IDs to be able to make sure that we are individually identifying things. The next thing that we're going to do, we're going to do another prop. We're going to have a string. We are going to have a symbol. Why do we need the string? Well, think about if you try to, since we are using an ID, we're using a number to identify an ID. If we change this to a string, that would not be what we want. We want a number. And the same thing, we want to be able to identify our stock with a string, aka a word that is a symbol. And if we put an integer there, that really would not make sense.